What if the real estate market crashes? Those were the last bubbles that burst. This one is much bigger. And even if those bubbles don't burst, because the Fed fills them with so much air by printing so much money, it's not going to matter when the dollar collapses. That is the biggest threat that people face, particularly if you're planning on retiring. I think retirement in America is going to go the way of the single family household. Once upon a time in America, if you were a guy and you had a job, your wife didn't need to work. Now most people's wives have to work and they can still barely make ends meet. But at one time, Americans could actually stop working and enjoy their golden years. That's not going to happen anymore. I mean, pretty soon if somebody sees somebody retired on an old sitcom, they're not even going to know what that is. It's like, hey, why is that person not working? What are they doing? Why don't they have a job? That's called retirement. That used to happen in America, but nobody retires. People are going to have to work every day until they drop dead because they're not going to be able to have enough purchasing power to buy the things that they need to sustain themselves in retirement. So those are the people who are most important. You mentioned the young people. The young people can leave. They can pick up and move out of this country. Just like my grandparents came here looking for opportunity, our grandkids can leave in pursuit of the same thing. It's the people that can't leave, that have already spent a lifetime working to build up a nest egg. That nest egg can crack. It'll be rotten if you don't do something to protect it.
It's so sad, and of course what's taken our money and devalued it is all this inflation, and it's all the regulations and bureaucracy where people have to work so many jobs. It's clear big government regulations, insider groups being exempt has caused this uneven playing field. I have two questions for you, Peter Schiff. Again, folks, Europac.net, who's joining us here, major fund manager. Why are the Texas government and other governments asking for their gold from the Federal Reserve? Why is the New York Fed saying we're not going to give it to you, or we're going to give it to you a little bit a year over the next decade? What does that expose? Why do we hear all these big banks calling for an end of cash, calling for bail-ins again in Europe with Greece? I want to talk about that, and then I want to ask the other question, which is the argument that the fact that our bond market is so weak, the fact that the dollar is so weak, everybody's scared and it's propping it up, and will just keep propping it up because they don't want everything to come down.
Yeah, well, first of all, the dollar has been propped up recently. It's not as weak as it would be if people understood the predicament. It's because people have a false sense of confidence in the U.S. economy, and because they believe the Fed is actually going to embark on a rate hiking campaign. That's the reason for the dollar's strength, or at least relative strength, and that's what's been keeping this whole thing from collapsing. It's keeping people buying into our bond market. It's propping up our economy. It's making it possible for Americans to buy things even though we don't make them. We can run these huge trade deficits because our creditors are willing to hold our currency instead of demanding payment in actual goods.
Sure, but they're not trying to save us, though. Every time it goes down, they run in and buy it.
Well, they haven't had to recently because there's been a lot of fools. A lot of currency speculators have been buying. But, currency speculators have been wrong in the past. They've overestimated the strength of the U.S. economy, and they've done it again. And I think the dollar is on the verge of a collapse. And again, that is going to be the real crisis. As to why Texas or anybody else is demanding that the Federal Reserve return their gold, I think they're worried that the gold's not actually there. We're getting closer and closer to a real crisis, and people around the world want to actually have their gold. Because the problem is when there is a rush back to gold and out of fiat currencies, which may not just be the dollar, but the euro, the yen, there are a lot of currencies that have problems, but I think the dollar's problem dwarfs all the others, but the other currencies suffer from the same disease. But when there's a real rush back into gold, there's no gold. There's not nearly enough gold to go around.
Let's talk about that. One final segment with Peter Schiff back in 3 minutes. I want to break down precious metals. It's come out. They've been artificially depressing it, just like they've been rigging the currency markets and interest rates. I mean, that's now all admitted. Where is that going? And is the rush to get physical gold out of the Federal Reserve vaults a sign of a rush to the exits? We'll be talking to Jakari Jackson, our reporter, via video Skype, who's on the ground in Charleston, the site of the tragic events last Wednesday night at the church. They sent in the Democratic Party operatives to try to stir stuff up, and the mainly black crowd of Christian folks just said, get out of here. We're not going to have a race war like you want. So really exciting. We're going to get an update for about 10, 15 minutes with Jakari, then all this other economic, military, news we haven't gotten to. Earth enters sixth extinction phase with many species, including our own, labeled the walking dead. That's a major new government report out by Stanford, Princeton, and Berkeley. Is it fear-mongering, or is there something really behind it? I'll give you my take. That's all coming up. I just want to be clear about something here. Again, I didn't build this system, you didn't build it, but we've all kind of collectively been part of it. And I don't put all this news out trying to scare people. It's like if I called my neighbor because their house was on fire. I'm not scaremongering. There's flames coming out. Historically, as Ron Paul said, as Peter Schiff said, this has always gone really disastrously. And now it's gotten bigger than ever. The establishment acts like it can go on forever while they hoard gold, hoard cash, buy farmland and build bunkers and try to act like they're nobody. So I don't see them in their actions belying that they believe the confidence game they're pushing. In the 5 minutes we've got left, Europacific.net, his new book, well, it's been out for a while. It's a bestseller. The Real Crash, How to Save Yourself, Your Country, Peter D. Schiff. In closing, is this move to get the gold away from the Federal Reserve and these governments trying to hold more gold and UT buying gold and Texas wanting its gold back, is that a move towards the exits? And any other points you think are important to make?
Well, you know, I think the movement started abroad. Remember the Germans trying to get their gold, but there are a lot of other foreign central banks that are not nearly as big players as the Bundesbank, but they've been trying to repatriate their gold and get it out of the United States. So it shows that people are beginning to doubt. You know, they're beginning to question whether the emperor has any clothes, and so they're asking for their gold. And that's one of the reasons that I think individuals should ask for their gold, too. I mean, a lot of individuals, that's why we sell physical gold and recommend that people take delivery. Own your own gold, right? Do what these central banks are doing. Don't necessarily trust to have all your gold in the hands of a third party. And that includes U.S. banks. I wouldn't want to keep my gold in a safety deposit box because, you know, if they ever confiscate it, that's the first place they're going to look. So you're not going to get it out of your safety deposit box. So you need to do something to have physical ownership. But I like to spread it around the world. I have clients, we store gold in Australia, we store it in Switzerland, we store it in Singapore. I believe in diversifying where you have your gold. Have some of it, you know, with yourself, but have other gold outside the country.
That's right. It's not about making money now. It's about keeping your money.
Yeah, and if you have to leave the country one day, I mean, you might not be able to take anything with you. So it's going to be good to have that gold safely offshore so that it'll be waiting for you when you get wherever it is you're going. And, hey, by the way, I've got the website now, Europac.com. I finally bought that. So I'm not just Europac.net, but I'm Europac.com, too.
Well, fantastic. You know, I tell you, Peter, it is an amazing time to be alive. And when all this unravels, which it will, it's like you said, they're going to say, who could have seen it coming? And then I've got all those clips of Ron Paul on the House floor 7, 8 years before warning. Democrats at 15 years before warning. Video you 5, 6 years before warning on. I mean, it's just crazy how they play dumb. And this confidence game is just scary.
Yeah, they never want to acknowledge the critics. I remember, you know, in the days right after the financial crisis of 2008, when they convened hearings in Washington to figure out why there was a crisis, you know, I was begging to be called as a witness. I've since testified twice in Congress on other matters, but I wanted to testify on that committee because I knew why we had a financial crisis, but they refused to let me talk. Instead, all they did is talk to people who blamed greedy corporations.
You're right.
And who recommended more government as the solution.
Peter Schiff, amazing. Thank you. I'm Alex Jones. Stay